he's out to change the European Union as we know it. And so is she. He is too, of course. They're all anti-immigration, mostly Eurosceptic and nationalist. Their supporters say that Brussels is just a big bureaucratic monster, out to destroy national identities and make money on the backs of regular folks. It's a page they took out of the playbook of this guy. But let's stick with Europe. After all, we have elections for the European Parliament coming up. So most of the time, these politicians are called populists, meaning they pretend to speak in the name of the people. And according to them, the people of Europe are fed up with the EU as we know it.
All across Europe, an increasing number of people seem to think that their lives are being controlled by elites that don't care about them, by huge globalized digital companies, by corrupt politicians, by biased journalists. Whether this is true or not is a different story, but the anger in the streets is very, very real, especially in France, where supporters of the yellow vests and also the far right seem to think that populist movements and populist parties are the answer to their problems.
So I ask myself, is populism killing Europe? In early April, I went to the north of France to spend some time with the Yellow Vests in the region. They started out as a protest movement against an increase in fuel tax. The vests became the symbol because everyone has to have one in their car. Arnaud Lautner works as a forklift operator and has 4 kids. On this day, he and his small group were on their way to Lille, a march of about 13 kilometers. The main target of their protest, the government.
C'est la politique du gouvernement. Dans la galère, les yeux dans la misère. C'est la politique du gouvernement.
Parce que le gouvernement se fout de notre gueule.
Comment?
Ils augmentent tout. À part les salaires, ils n'augmentent pas les salaires. Ils augmentent tout ce qui est première nécessité, c'est-à-dire l'alimentation. Ils augmentent le gasoil, l'essence. Voilà pourquoi on fait ça.
Et qu'est-ce que ça fait pour vous, pour votre vie?
Ben, nous, on a du mal à survivre, quoi. On vit plus, on survit, là.
Oui.
Bah oui, c'est très dur. Hein.
Est-ce qu'il y a des choses que vous ne pouvez pas vous acheter, que vous aimeriez bien avoir?
Bah déjà, on ne peut plus partir en vacances.
Oui.
Ça fait des années qu'on ne part pas en vacances. Après, on a du mal à faire acheter une voiture ou alors faire réparer sa voiture. On n'arrive pas.
Oui.
On peut plus acheter, on peut plus aller au restaurant, on peut plus aller au cinéma, voilà, tout ça, quoi.
The frustration in France is so intense that since December, the Yellow Vests demonstrations have often degenerated into riots here in Paris. And even though the general population's support is decreasing due to the violence, the movement just isn't going away. Many Yellow Vests feel misunderstood by the media because of the shocking pictures from the capital. That's also true for Arnaud Lautner. These Yellow Vests don't want to be associated with violence, but with solidarity. They see themselves as the good guys, defending the people against those up there, including the European Union.
Ce qu'on veut, c'est sortir de l'Europe.
Pourquoi?
Parce que depuis qu'on est dans l'Europe, on est dans la merde.
Oui.
Oui.
Et qu'est-ce que l'Europe a à voir avec tout ça?
C'est qui c'est qui a construit l'Europe? C'est les gros riches, attention. C'est les riches.
Oui.
Qui c'est qui a, à votre avis, qui c'est qui a mis Macron au pouvoir? C'est les riches. C'est les Rothschild. Voilà. Parce que le président de la République, c'est un pantin. Lui, il fait ce qu'on lui dit de faire. C'est pas un président.
Some would call this a conspiracy theory, but many in France see it this way, and this perception is fueled by the likes of one of Europe's most successful right-wing populists, Marine Le Pen. French President Emmanuel Macron did realize how dangerous this was to his presidency and tried to counterattack with a big national debate. The message, I am listening to you. But will this be enough to overcome populism?
Sometimes I can't help thinking whether populism really is the right word to describe all these movements and people. A lot of politicians promise easy answers to complex problems. Emmanuel Macron did that. The current French president, he, at his core, was a populist during the campaign. So to describe what's happening in France in many ways, maybe you need a different word.
So how do the yellow vests see themselves? Walking 13 kilometers gave me a lot of time to ask questions.
Est-ce que c'est un mouvement extrême? Est-ce que c'est un mouvement nationaliste? Est-ce que c'est, ou vous dites seulement le seul truc c'est populaire?
Je dirais populaire, après chacun tire ce qu'il a tiré de ça, mais pour nous en tout cas c'est populaire. Pour moi ça l'est. Et il n'y a aucun...
Pas national.
Si, on pourrait dire aussi, ouais, mais voilà.
Parce qu'il y en a beaucoup qui sont contre l'Europe.
Aussi, ouais. Bah, on se rend compte qu'on nous a fait au début, on nous a dit que l'Europe allait améliorer les choses pour tout le monde, uniformiser, et on se rend compte qu'au final, depuis qu'on est passé, on est dans l'Europe et qu'on est passé surtout à l'euro, la vie est extrêmement chère.
Ouais, la famille, ouais. Ouais, c'est vrai. Famille et solidarité.
Et c'est un mouvement populiste ou pas?
Non.
Un mouvement
Populiste.
Non, populaire.
Populaire. Mais pas populiste.
Et dans ce que vous revendiquez, vous êtes extrême ou pas?
Non, pas du tout. On est pacifiste.
These yellow vests clearly identify with a number of different concepts. But it seems to me that what also keeps them coming back week after week is the camaraderie. In the end, we made it to Lille, where other yellow vests from the region were already waiting. Hear that? That's their battle cry against the French president. Even if this wasn't the biggest of gatherings, the determination and especially the votes of these people could prevent Macron's party from coming in first in the European elections. Macron has become a red flag for populists all across Europe. He's not afraid to pick a fight with the likes of Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban. But his opponents seem to be getting stronger. They govern in Hungary, Italy, and Poland, to name just 3. And in the European elections, they want to take well above 100 seats in this house, the European Parliament. The crucial question is, will they be able to obstruct business as usual? The disgruntled French might provide the necessary votes.
This whole area here, the north of France, is having rough times. Traditionally, it's a mining area, but of course, with industrial decline for decades, there are many problems. High unemployment, one of the highest poverty rates in the whole country, and then of course something you find in many rural areas of France, which is the feeling of being completely disconnected of the opportunities of the big cities. So many people here feel like they have no future.
Sure, it's a beautiful countryside, but the unemployment rate is 2.5% higher than the French average, and the poverty rate is around 17%. That's ample reason for anger and gives populist politicians here a lot of ammunition for their attacks on the government. All right, so we walked with the yellow vests. Let's take a look at what the Rassemblement National is up to in the region. I went to a campaign stop in the north. On the menu, the RN's 23-year-old lead candidate for the European elections, Jordan Bardella. But he didn't come alone. Most people were here to see her. Marine Le Pen herself, although she's not running for a seat in the European Parliament, she has her sights set on the French presidency. My first order of business was to find out how people here really tick.
Je suppose parce que vous êtes ici, vous n'êtes pas content du gouvernement. C'est correct?
C'est correct.
Et pourquoi?
À cause de tout, sur les personnes âgées, les gens qui n'ont plus de quoi manger à la fin du mois, et voilà quoi.
Pour les personnes âgées, le pouvoir d'achat est très très bas.
On doit penser d'abord aux Français, la France aux Français, et avec M. Macron, à aujourd'hui, c'est tout le contraire qui se passe.
Est-ce que vous êtes content du travail du gouvernement actuel?
Non,
Pourquoi?
parce qu'il ne fait rien, Macron, puis c'est tout.
Il fait des choses quand même.
Il ne fait rien du tout. Il n'y a que pour les riches, pas pour l'ouvrier, pas pour les pauvres. Il devrait mettre l'ISF en priorité. Ça fait plus les gilets jaunes depuis le mois de novembre, ils se battent, ils ont raison.
We've heard that one before. There are many points of intersection between the RN and the Yellow Vests. It seems the party can expect at least some votes from them. In her speech that day, Le Pen mentioned the Yellow Vests a couple of times. She was clearly trying to build a bridge there, but she really got going when she talked about the European Union.
Nous ne resterons pas prisonniers de la seringue européiste. Optimistes, par patriotisme, nous sommes pour la protection, donc nous sommes pour la nation qui est pour chacun l'espace le plus protecteur. Le respect des nations signifie le respect des peuples, et le respect des peuples signifie le respect des citoyens et des personnes. Et c'est pourquoi nous travaillons à l'avènement de l'Europe des nations, c'est-à-dire l'Europe des peuples et des gens. Moi, j'ai envie, je suis désolé de le dire, que les Français restent des Français, que les Roumains restent des Roumains, que les Italiens restent des Italiens, que les Espagnols restent des Espagnols, que les Allemands restent des Allemands et les Autrichiens des Autrichiens.
As you can see, there is a big dose of nationalism in that campaign.
Marine Le Pen talked a lot about the Europe of nations that she wants, but being a German, I asked myself, isn't that exactly the Europe that brought 2 world wars to this place, to this continent? So what exactly does she want? What does that Europe look like?
I tried to ask her whether she acknowledged that the EU is responsible for one of the longest peaceful stretches in European history,
Madame Le Pen.
but she didn't want to talk to me. Her European candidate kept us waiting a long time, saying the French had priority. But then he explained himself.
Oui.
La dernière fois qu'on avait l'Europe des nations, on avait aussi 2 grandes guerres ici.
Oui.
Est-ce que c'est pas l'Union européenne qui est aussi le garant de la paix sur ce continent?
Non, je crois pas. Je pense que ce sont les empires qui sont responsables de la guerre, pas les nations. 95% des pays du monde maîtrisent leur budget, maîtrisent leurs frontières économiques, leurs frontières territoriales. Et je crois que c'est aujourd'hui l'Union européenne qui nous amène à la régression, en menant des politiques qui ont amené des pays comme la Grèce, comme l'Espagne à l'âge de pierre économique, où l'espérance de vie régresse, où vous avez un jeune sur 2 qui est au chômage. Je crois que c'est ça la régression. Et je crois que le courant d'idées qu'on incarne est un courant d'avenir, parce qu'il arrive au pouvoir dans beaucoup de pays d'Europe. Que ce soit avec nos amis de la Ligue, Salvini en Italie, nos alliés du FPO en Autriche, où ils réussissent à avoir des résultats très concrets. Et Salvini en Italie, je crois qu'il a réussi à redonner confiance dans la politique pour les Italiens. Il a réussi à redonner confiance dans son peuple. Et cette espérance, cet espoir qu'il porte en Italie, on veut le porter nous en France. Merci beaucoup.
Oof, where to start? Fact-checking this answer will keep you busy for a while. Let me just say this. Greece and Spain are not in an economic stone age, and even though youth unemployment is high, it's nowhere near the 50% Jordan Bardella is claiming. I guess that's the thing with many populists. They don't let facts get in the way of good election results.
So people feel like they're being left behind. They feel like they're being treated unfairly, and that's why they're voting for populist parties. The populist parties, on the other hand, hope to win the European elections, and also here in France to take over the government at some point. Something, by the way, that populist parties in other countries have already done.
And that's where we're going now. This is the Polish capital, Warsaw. Great city, by the way, but politically, it sort of has a bit of a bad reputation ever since this man came into power. Jarosław Kaczyński is the head of the governing Law and Justice Party, PiS. And although he doesn't have an official government post, he pulls the strings in the back rooms. He's nationalist and authoritarian, and according to the EU Commission, his reforms are undermining the rule of law.
The Polish people decided to join the European Union.
In this courthouse in Warsaw, there's a lot of grief because of the judicial reforms and personnel changes the Polish government has initiated in the last years. Critics say it's given the government de facto control of much of the judiciary system, including the Constitutional Court.
So I have reported a lot about the judicial reforms here in Poland and how they affect the rule of law, but I did it from Brussels, where obviously it's a big deal. But now it's time to talk to the people on the ground that are actually affected by it.
I've come to meet Ursula Schultak, a judge. She gets up at 5 every morning and handles dozens of cases a day. When I was there, she heard 2 lawyers in a dispute about property taxes. It seems like a minor case, but she could get in trouble nevertheless. Through the reforms, the ruling party has the power to influence any case it wishes because it can put pressure on the judges.
Te wszystkie zmiany, które są wprowadzane, one w zasadzie doprowadzają do tego, że jednak Polska troszeczkę izoluje się od Unii Europejskiej. To jest łamanie standardów demokratycznego państwa prawa, które jest w Unii Europejskiej. To powoduje, że zaczyna być zagrożone prawo do sądu obywateli, co jest ewidentnie sprzeczne z prawem Unii Europejskiej. Więc tutaj absolutnie nie można mówić w tym zakresie, że to jest w duchu zmian takich proeuropejskich. Nawet powiem, niezrozumiałe jest dla sędziów tutaj mieszkających stanowisko i rządów, stanowisko ministra sprawiedliwości podkreślające, że te zmiany mają na celu ukrócić rzekomą korupcję u sędziów bądź wyeliminowanie sędziów, którzy mają komunistyczne pochodzenie. To jest wszystko nieprawda. Natomiast to jest tak, że jest bardzo duża grupa sędziów, którzy są po prostu obserwowani. Być może to jest też oczekiwanie na to, że w określonym momencie określone konsekwencje mogą być w stosunku do każdego z sędziów, którzy biorą udział w debacie publicznej, wyciągane albo próby podejmowane.
So this is what can happen in just a few years with a right-wing populist government taking control. At least in Poland, the separation of powers is under threat. Part of the foundation of modern democracy just put in the bin.
To znaczy, ja jestem sędzią europejskim. Identyfikuję się generalnie z takimi ogólnymi zasadami, które funkcjonują w Unii Europejskiej. Te wszelkiego rodzaju rozwiązania, które tu są próbowane do wprowadzenia przez partię rządzącą, dotyczące zwiększenia wpływu na sędziów, no to nie, jako obywatel, jako sędzia europejski, jako sędzia polski, no nie mogę się identyfikować, ponieważ dla mnie gwarancją prawidłowego orzekania jest to, żebym była niezależna w swoich orzeczeniach od jakichkolwiek czynników zewnętrznych, przede wszystkim od polityków. Nie ma takiej możliwości, żeby politycy wpływali na orzeczenia sądów.
Of course, not everyone in Poland has this understanding of Europe. In fact, just a few blocks down these very wide roads, some politicians have a radically different view. Remember this man coming down the aisle? Jarosław Kaczyński. It's the first time I got to see him in the flesh. He was attending a session of the Polish parliament, the so-called Sejm. His party was struggling with teacher protests. They want more money. As a populist party, the PiS has promised a lot to the people. Not all promises were kept. Kaczyński wouldn't talk to us, but we convinced his colleague, Jacek Bugocki, to give us an interview. He's from the eastern part of Poland, where people tend to be more Eurosceptic. My first question, of course, was on the judicial reforms.
We just talked to a judge who said that your judicial reforms are undermining democracy. What do you have to say to that?
Wprowadzamy takie rozwiązania, które choćby w Niemczech, ale w większości krajów Europy już obowiązują. Trzeba też popatrzeć na to, czy Polacy są zadowoleni z obecnego systemu. Generalnie nie są. To jest system, który odziedziczyliśmy po czasach komunizmu i powinien się zmienić. Powinien zmienić się na bardziej właśnie demokratyczny, bardziej odpowiadający współczesnym standardom. Myślę, że nie do końca politycy brukselscy rozumieją reformę i patrzą na naszą reformę w kontekście rozwiązań, jakie funkcjonują w innych państwach Europy. Po prostu przez 30 lat nie zmieniliśmy nic w tym systemie. System pozostał przestarzały i trzeba go zreformować, zmienić. I tylko tyle i aż tyle chcemy zrobić.
Quick interjection. This is a typical line of defense from the Peace Party in Poland. We're just doing what all the other countries are doing. In the case of the judicial reforms, this is just not true.
So what do your people in your circumscription back home, the people that elected you, care about when it comes to the European Union?
Przede wszystkim moje tereny są rolnicze, więc w tym kontekście rozmawia się najwięcej. Zresztą rolnicy są, obszar rolnictwa jest jednym z głównych obszarów działania Unii Europejskiej. Chcą po prostu równego traktowania, jednakowych dopłat w całej Unii, jednakowego traktowania Polski, tak jak traktowane są państwa starej części Unii. No ciągle jesteśmy tym gorszym dzieckiem Unii Europejskiej, bo dopłaty polscy rolnicy mają niższe.
Polish farmers are the fifth largest beneficiaries of EU agricultural subsidies. But calculated per hectare, they get less money than their Western colleagues. Outside of the capital, the landscape quickly changes to suit Poland's most important industry, agriculture.
So the congressman really seems to believe that people back home in his constituency are being treated unfairly by the European Union. It is the most eastern part of the country and therefore also the eastern border of the European Union. And I think it's time to go check it out.
This is Wysoki Mazowiecki, the district of the congressman I talked to. There's not much of a center, so we just waited in front of the grocery store and started asking the people whether they think the European Union is treating Poland unfairly.
Nie, bo w ogóle to nie powinni się do Unii, kurczę, wtrącę, powinni całkiem do Unii nie wchodzić.
Polska?
Pewno.
Dlaczego pan tak sądzi?
No bo oni narzucają nam sami.
Dlaczego nie? Bo oni po prostu nie wiedzą, no typu jakieś tam ogórki i tak dalej, są niektóre takie rzeczy podejmowane, to jest absurd.
To Unia to ma przecież tych ludzi, którzy sam rząd powinien się o to troszczyć, a nie Unia Europejska. A oni tam reprezentują Polskę.
Jak oni sami nogi podkładają, no to nie ma co.
No, mi się wydaje, że przecież ile teraz ludzi pcha się do tego Europarlamentu, to ma ten przywódca, cały szef Unii tutaj wiedzieć, co się dzieje u nas, jak tam się owijają w bawełnę.
Ja ogólnie myślę, że Unia Europejska tak się rozpadnie, nie? Ale problemów na pewno nie rozwiąże. Może nam pomagać, nie? Ale problemów nie rozwiąże.
Yep, that really doesn't sound like a ringing endorsement, but it's clear that Poland has and still is profiting from its EU membership. Even today, there's construction going on everywhere, with funding from the EU. Poland has received a staggering 100 billion euros in fundings since it joined the EU in 2004. About that, I went to see Marek Zergiej. He's a local businessman, and I just couldn't imagine him being as anti-EU as the other folks I met. But first things first, here's what the company he runs produces.
Beveling machine, and this is making the very nice beveling of the edges of the metal plates or pipes. Welding carriage, which is replacing the welder's hand. Punching machine, which is making the holes in the metal sheets.
Yup, they make machines and then they export them. Annual turnover, 21 million euros.
And then?
My favorite machine is this big one right here. It cuts holes into the stem of those huge wind turbines you see all across Europe.
This machine, you're the only ones to produce this kind of machine in the world, right?
Yes, correct.
And where do you export most of it?
I mean, mainly in Europe, because the labor force in Europe are quite expensive. So people are looking for the mechanization of the processes as much as possible, you know, because then they make them competitive, more competitive.
And with Europe, he means all the member states and not just Poland. That brings us back to populism. Remember, this company has to follow the rules and regulations set by a populist national government that makes a living off of criticizing the European Union. In a way, it bites the hand that feeds them. But Marek Giergiev knows what's good for his business.
What's the biggest achievement of the European Union?
I think free market.
Single market?
Single market. And free market. I mean, the movement without any borders and things like that, which was the nightmare. I was born in the period of time when we are used to the, strict border controls, big queues on each border.
Very strict.
Oh, at this time it was very strict.
Yeah. If you look at the government, the Peace Party, and some people here also in the region, they want to go back to more nationalistic policies. Is that something that's good for your business or bad?
No, this is definitely bad for the business. And I think that people do not realize, if they are thinking about that we want to be nationalized, it's more like a protection of people from, say, Asia, Africa to come in, but not to stop the movement inside the European community or the Europe at all. I think that people do not realize what are the consequences of this type of a political movement and what are the consequences of implementing these type of political ideas into life.
Do you feel like trying to implement those policies is a threat to the European Union?
Correct. I think it's a threat.
Surprise! Turns out that nationalism in a globalized world and judicial reforms that create uncertainty are bad for business. But undeniably, that's what populists all across Europe are trying to do. In France, Marine Le Pen is just promising it because she's not in power yet. In Poland, I could observe what it could actually mean to implement those policies. In any case, the ones we call populists are set to make big gains in the European elections.
Is populism killing Europe? I went to France in the west. I went to Poland in the east. And you know what? I wouldn't really call it populism. I would call it nationalism. And nationalistic ideas are at the opposite of what the European Union stands for, especially its single market that's helping companies like this one to thrive. So yes, the answer is quite simple. Nationalism is killing the European Union, at least the European Union as we know it.